were telling you about an event that is going to be coming to Memphis in 8 days. In fact, over the course of 2 days, Impact Wrestling is returning to Memphis for a 2-night Mid-South Mayhem at Graceland Live. And two of the most accomplished female wrestlers we have, Deonna Purrazzo and Mickie James, are both going to be there. Mickie's on her way up. Deonna is here. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so how does a girl like you get started in wrestling in the first place?
Well, I have a twin brother, and he was a big wrestling fan while we were young. And I saw Stone Cold Steve Austin hit someone over the head with a chair when I was like 8 or 9, and I was just like, what the heck is this? I need to know everything about it. And then as time went on, I got to see the women do it, and I just never grew out of thinking, if I could learn how to do that one day, I could do that well too.
Okay, but at what point does it become a reality for you? Do you have like a normal childhood, go to high school, go to college?
Yeah.
And then what are you doing after college?
Yeah, so I graduated high school June of 2012.
Okay.
And by December, I was in a wrestling school. I was also trying to go to county college full-time for an exercise science degree. And I was working part-time that became full-time as a preschool teacher. So my schedule was packed. I had a normal childhood. I was a cheerleader. I ran track. I did gymnastics. I did all of that. But always in the back of my mind, I was doing gymnastics. I was cheerleading because I thought one day that will help me become a professional wrestler. So there was nothing else I was ever going to do. It was only going to be wrestling.
Did your parents encourage this? Did they want Deonna to be they want you to be a preschool teacher, or did they?
I don't know what they wanted. I think that when I was 9 and I said, I'm going to be a professional wrestler, they were like, yeah, okay, you'll grow out of that. And then when I was 15, there was a school that took students at 16, and I printed out the paperwork, and I said, I just need you to sign it, and I can be a professional wrestler. And they were like, no, that's not happening. If you want to do this when you're 18 and you can figure it out, then by all means do it. So that's what I did. When I had a car and I had a job to pay for it, that was the first thing I did.
When was the first time you wrestled someone?
The first time I wrestled someone live on a show in front of people was December 6, 2013.
Wow. Yeah. This is a year. Didn't you just say you graduated in 12?
I graduated high school in 2012, yeah.
So within a year?
Yes.
Oh, wow. All right, Mickie James, thanks for coming in.
Oh, you're welcome.
How did you get started?
I wouldn't say I fell into wrestling, but I do kind of say that because when I was a wrestling fan, I grew up watching it, but I was also really into my equine sports, and so I showed and competed horses my whole life. That's what I thought I was going to do. I was going to be a horse trainer. And then I got out of high school and didn't have a lot of direction or whatever, and it was the Attitude Era, which is my favorite era of wrestling, period. And it was hotter than ever, and a friend of mine, I was working in a bar, and a buddy of mine's like, hey, you love wrestling so much, because I would have it on the bar TVs, like, right, and just be totally
Where are you
locked
bartending?
It was a club, I will say, a nightclub.
A nightclub.
It was a nightclub, a club of the night.
All right, so you were bartending at a nightclub,
Yeah.
and a guy's like, hey, man, you should do this.
You love wrestling, like, so much, and my buddy has a wrestling school. It's up in D.C., like 2 hours from Richmond is where I'm from. You should go check it out. I think you'd be really good at it. And my mind was blown because I was still very much, even when I first started wrestling, I was still very much a fan. And I just thought that they found these people, like, you know, the bearded lady in the circus. Like, they just found them because they were so much larger than life to me. And then I was like, oh my God. And I walked into that school, which was in the back of a jiu-jitsu and boxing facility. And that's where I learned how to wrestle. My first probably year was in a boxing ring.
Well, let's backtrack. So you did all the equine stuff, right?
Yep.
So you think I'm getting into horses, and that's going to be what I'm going to be doing. Mm-hmm. But you're bartending at the time. Now, were you an athlete in high school?
I was not. In fact, I tried out for the cheerleading team probably my junior year and senior year, and I never made the team.
Oh, no.
I know, it's devastating. But you know what? I'm doing all right now.
But
so
were
it's
you
okay.
always
I
athletic?
think so.
I was always athletic, and I was always a tomboy. I mean, we had four-wheelers. I grew up, the farm and the horses are all consuming, right? Like, it was all my weekends. It was all my evenings. It was every summer.
Right.
Because that was when our competitions were, like, starting the latter part of spring all the way through, if we did really well, to go to the nationals and stuff in, like, October. So that was the goal, is to hopefully last through October. But I was athletic, but in a different way. It wasn't like I played sports. I did play Little League baseball.
Yeah.
Like my sister and I were the first girls on our Little League baseball team, but I would not say I was good by any means.
So how were you guys when you first walk in and you're both of you, when you're doing the school, at what point in the school do you look around and be like, you know what, I might be able to do this? Because at that point, you're with a bunch of your peers that are also have this dream at that time as well, right?
Yeah, I was really fortunate to be the only girl in my class, but also one of like 2 or 3 other students.
Right.
So I got true one-on-one training for that majority of my first year. Was just me and my trainer and maybe one other person, on a Saturday when no one else came in. So I was fortunate enough to have a match so soon, and I was trusted so soon to have that opportunity because I got one-on-one training for 1 whole year.
Right.
And I wasn't taught like how to wrestle with just a girl. I was just one of the guys, and we practiced the same. I was hit the same. I was taught everything the same. So that way when I went out there and women's wrestling was just kind of like had this massive trajectory in 2011, 2012, it just kind of started to really get the ball rolling again. And I was just thrust right into that. So I was really fortunate.
How about you, Mickie? At what point are you in this school and you're like, you know what, I might be able to do this?
I think the moment I stepped into the ring that first time, it was just
Really?
like,
Just because you were a huge fan, so
I
you
wasn't-
knew how to act?
No,
knew...
I did not. I was
No?
terrible.
Oh.
I would say probably the first 4 years I was not good. Not saying that, but like when I go back and watch, I cringe watching some of it.
What was
But,
your thing? What did you want your thing to be?
Then obviously there's I want to be a superstar. I really want to make it, and I want to be a champion. But as I progressed and as I realized like the industry that I was stepping into, my goal was to I want to change the business for women because Deonna said, like, she only trained with men. I only trained with men. But the reasons were because there weren't women training to be wrestlers when I first broke in. I first stepped in a ring. That was November 1998. My first match was a tag match. It was March 3rd, 1999, and it was myself and Jake Damien against American Mike Brown, and Candy was her name. And it was at a Virginia Armory or something where most of us do a lot of our shows. But most of the women that were training, if they were training strictly to be like a valet or a manager. They didn't want to be in the ring and the physical part of it. But I grew up, I fell off horses all my life, so I wasn't afraid of taking the falls and the stuff like that. And I really enjoyed the physicality. Felt like it was like an outlet of all this aggression that I had built up. But also the art of the character stuff was always where I really was like, oh man, if I could just come up with a cool character that's different and not anything like that anyone else is doing. But yeah, I think that the moment I stepped in the ring and I just felt it just felt right. It felt like a home. It felt like home, and I was like, wow, this is special. Now, I didn't feel like I was doing anything special until a couple years later when I really started to find my groove and really started to fall into.
Were you ever a ridiculous character when you were on your way up?
I feel like I'm always a bit of a ridiculous character.
But did you ever have like some kind of hook that was just like, if we went back and found the tapes?
You will find tapes of when I first came out. I had these sweet shoulder pads that were like football, football shoulder pads. That I still have them to this day. They had like spikes all in them. Alexis Lurie was my wrestling name.
Oh, where did that come from?
I always loved the name Alexis. Lurie is legit my middle name. So kind of like mushed them together because for whatever reason, I was like, oh, I have to be somebody else in wrestling. Plus, it's fun because you can be somebody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so it went through a variety of names. I have no idea what I was trying to be because, you know, obviously.
What was the shoulder pads for?
Because it made me look tough.
Oh.
I felt like I was
You were
super
wearing,
tough
like,
with
real-
them. I was
but
like, look
real,
at me.
like, football
I'm
sh-
like LOD. I'm like a female road warrior, but not because I don't have a mohawk because I just have straight long hair. I don't know. I don't know what I was trying. You're trying to find yourself and what that's going to be, and so it was just a piece of. I felt like I didn't know where to buy. Of course, obviously everyone's gear is so flamboyant and just gorgeous now, but my gear was like soccer shin pads, but they were like metal, like on the outside, and I wore them over my wrestling shoes, like collegiate style wrestling shoes. I had like these things, like I'm like poor people when I actually kicked them. What an idiot I was. But like, so they were those shin guards and workout clothes, like a workout champion sports bra and a pair of workout shorts. So the shoulder pads is what set it all. Like that was like made it special in that opinion. So that's what she first kind of came out. And yeah, it took years to kind of figure out to define who she was going to be and what she was going to be.
Did you ever do it, Deonna? Did you ever have a ridiculous one?
I was trying to think, and not anything like shoulder pads kind of, but when I first started and I traveled with my trainer a lot, he really like guided me, and I would do these shows and I didn't have a character for a long time. Like I really just relied on.
You just went by your name?
Yeah, my name, Deonna Purrazzo. It's on my birth certificate. I felt very much the opposite of like, okay, you could just Google me and see that that's not my real name. So why wouldn't I just use my real name? Plus, how many people are you ever going to meet that's name is Deonna? Probably no one else. So I'm unique in that aspect, but he used to have me like tie my hair up in a knot and be like a sexy secretary or a teacher or something like that. And I would manage, you know, whoever would let me manage them on the show and just to get that experience in front of a crowd. But if you look at what I wear to the ring now, and then I have a bun with glasses and like a blazer on, is not who the Virtuosa is. So I wouldn't say it's crazy and out there, but it's very different from who I actually am.
And then you guys, how long was it, like, say, before you get into Impact, before you end up in front of huge crowds, right? Mm-hmm. When you're talking about playing armories, you know, gas station parking lots, all kinds of things, right? If we've had all manner of wrestlers in here in the past, they talk about some of their stories about where they performed, and especially a lot of them started here in Memphis, a huge wrestling town. What was the first time you remember, like, looking up at a crowd and being like, whoa, how did this happen?
I can answer first on that one because the crappiest show I ever wrestled, I'll give you that one first, was in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and it was in a used car parking lot. It was 104 degrees outside, and so there's two different types of material that the ring mat can be made out of. You hope for the cotton kind of apron, which is a normal, what you would see. Sometimes you get real lucky and you get this vinyl material that in the sun, I remember, and I was probably wrestling like 2 years at this point, and the first time I hit the mat, it felt like it burnt my flesh off, and I rolled out of the ring. And I remember my friend Bobby Joe, who I traveled with and wrestled with a lot, and I'm like, I'm not getting back in there. This is brutal. I'm like, what am I doing? So that was probably the crappiest place I ever wrestled, but still, whatever. But one would be like when I transferred schools into MCW, which was Maryland Championship Wrestling, which is a real hotbed at the time. And they ran this place called Michael's 8th Avenue. And it was the first time I had wrestled in front of it. And I think they had drawn this night 1,800 people. So that was the largest crowd I'd ever wrestled in front of. And I remember I was probably getting paid $50 that night, and I go like, oh my God, this is surreal. This is crazy to me because that's what you always hope for. And then truly, I would say, you know, when I first came to Impact when they first started off, like when I got an opportunity to do that, and the crowds there, because it was a brand new company, it was a baby company at the time, and it was fresh and it was exciting, and it was just fun to be a part of the birth of something, right? But it was also the first time on television that I could tell my mom or my dad, like, hey, you can actually go and watch this pay-per-view and you can see me do crazy things, which they cursed me for later, but yeah.
Were they ever like all on board? At what point did you get them to cross over? Your parents?
My dad was always on board.
They wanted you to be
My dad was always
into horses, though, right? Like that was
Yeah,
that's
no,
what you were gonna do.
and I still have horses, and I love them, and hopefully I can still do that. But my dad was always on board because he was a wrestling fan. My mom was not a wrestling. She liked Ricky Steamboat because he was handsome. You know, she liked oh, he's handsome, but she did not care about the wrestling. And the whole time I was training, and my mom I didn't get my mom on board until I probably got a job in developmental. That's when my mom finally came on board. And ironically, my mom was also the one when I almost quit when I was in developmental, was the one that talked me into staying. Whereas my dad was like, while I was sitting in Louisville for 2.5 years or whatever, my dad was actually kind of flipped on me and was like, maybe you might want to think about maybe just something back up just in case.
Is mom really straight-laced?
She's not. Well, no, I wouldn't say she's
Like, could you
straight.
tell her, like, hey, turn on the attitude area. You like this. This is what I want to do.
Right.
I mean,
She
you can't
would
tell your
probably-
parents.
Yeah.
Right? They'd be mortified.
Yeah. I mean, she's not super straight-laced in that respect. I mean, she was always fun. Like, I always felt like my mom was the fun one, and my dad was more the straight-laced one. But then I don't know. They're both a bit crazy, which explains so much in my life.
And how about you in terms of at what point did you look up and like, oh wow, this is a long way from me getting out of high school and in that first ring?
Yeah, I got to wrestle with Impact Wrestling. My 8th ever professional wrestling match was a Knockouts Knockdown in 2014. So it's an all women's pay-per-view, the first of its kind, and I had 7 matches before then, and I was not the person sitting here today. I was shy. I was scared to talk unless I was spoken to. I didn't have wrestling gear. I was laughing when Mickie was talking about that because I went to dancewearsolutions.com and bought a sparkly red top and little tiny booty shorts. And my trainer gave me kick pads to wear. So I didn't have wrestling gear. I had a bob because I just got out of high school and cut all my hair off. I was not a superstar by any means. And here Impact Wrestling was calling me with 24 hours notice to say, would you want to come be a part of our show? And I was like, I guess, I can't say no to that, So I flew myself to Orlando, Florida, showed up at Universal Studios, and I wrestled Brooke Tessmacher in my 8th ever professional wrestling match. Wow. I didn't know where a hard cam was. I didn't know how to work the crowd. I could barely do a body slam.
Were you just terrified?
I was terrified. And I remember stepping in the ring and the bell ringing and crying to Earl Hebner, I can't do it. I can't do this. And he's like, you could do it, kid. Suck it up. You could do it. I didn't have a choice, but I was like, I don't think I can do this. I was so painstakingly shy and couldn't even look at the people, let alone pick my head up to do it. That was the first time that I was like, holy crap, what did I get myself into? But then afterwards, it was like, that's everything I ever wanted in my whole life.
How about, on the flip side, with that kind of story and you talking about being in that gas station parking lot, when's the first time that you felt like, all right, this is I'm comfortable, I own this, I am performing now. You're not even thinking to yourself anymore about performing and am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? Do you remember the first time that you felt like, all right, I'm now who I was supposed to be?
I think just in the last maybe 3 years. And this year is 11 years that I've been wrestling, but I feel like since I came back to Impact Wrestling in 2020 is really when all of those pieces came together for me. Being the virtuosa, I knew who she was inside and out. I knew what she wore and how she would interact with people. And I was getting the opportunities on a, weekly basis to be able to showcase that to the world. And I think that that's really when everything came together for me, was here at Impact.
How about you, Mickie?
I would say it didn't happen until I was in developmental at OVW in Louisville is where I went into Louisville being a really good wrestler, especially for my time when there was not a lot of women wrestling. But I really fine-tuned my craft from my promos to my character development to being, there's a term they use there all the time, being called over-prepared, and to be over-prepared for any situation. And I would never felt over-prepared prior to coming there, but after being there for about a year, I think I started to really settle in to where I felt comfortable that no matter what happened, no matter what situation, if somebody got hurt, if we had to, change something or change everything in the moment, that I was confident in myself to be able to do that. And at that time, I'd still been on television. I'd done Ring of Honor. I was part of TNA at the time, Impact Wrestling in the beginning of their kind of like conception. And then, and it was such a smaller area too. So like I was on television and practicing for TV there, but the whole idea was to kind of tuck away, and then before they brought you to WWE TV. And so I think that by the time I debuted, I was very confident. I was nervous, obviously, because you're getting this grand opportunity. You don't want to drop the ball, and there's a lot of pressure and all that. But it was only more of the pressure, I think, came more in the etiquette and the more the like politics and how to do that side of it, more so than once I was through that curtain, I was beyond confident.
So when you were talking about being over-prepared and for anything that could possibly happen, what's the craziest thing that's happened while you were in a match? Like where the wrench gets thrown into it and that level of preparedness was called upon the most?
Yeah. Do you have?
You got one?
I don't. Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, I have where I was in a match with Trish, and Trish Stratus, who was a big rival of mine. In WWE, and it was going to be it's kind of like her first farewell tour or whatever, and she was just coming back and doing something, and I remember we had done this thing, which we had done at live events and stuff a million times, where I we're sitting on the top, and then I dump her out to the outside, and the stairs were right there, and when she went to put her hand down, her whole shoulder and everything, and we still had about 5 minutes that we were supposed to before break, and she could not, it broke her clavicle, it broke everything right here, and then she was out for a long time actually after that, and I felt so bad, but everything that we were supposed to do after that.
What was the pivot? If I go back and find, I could probably find it. Everything's still.
You won't be able to miss it because they replay it. And you can literally see when she puts her arm down, because the stairs were there.
Oh my God.
And so she was trying to move to pivot around the stairs. You can literally see her whole shoulder, everything just kind of.
What's the pivot in the match? At what point? What do you? Does she tell you?
It was.
I just broke this.
No, I didn't know until she rolled back in. Until we got her back in the ring, and she got back in the ring, and I realized she's legit hurt. She's legit hurt, and that's happened a couple of times. That's happened to me, where I've been legit hurt with Melina. And I was doing her Karana off the top rope, and for whatever reason, she kind of buckled, and I lawn darted myself, and I could not see.
On your head?
On my neck, you can see it's in I think it's in the Botchamania thing, but I legit was I wouldn't say unconscious, but I couldn't turn my head for 3 weeks. I was turning like this because I had such severe whiplash. I didn't break.
You jumped off the top rope and landed basically on your head.
On her, so she's sitting on the top turnbuckle, and I jumped on her shoulders like this to then flip her off, and she held on. But when she held on, she also kind of did this, and so instead of going and just landing on my belly, which is typical what you would hope, that's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
I kind of landed more like this on my neck, whole area like this. So that one was another one. I've had a few. I was in the match with Saraya when a thing with her and Sasha happened, and she got the thing with her neck, and she completely collapsed. She couldn't stand back up. She tried to stand back up, and I remember because I was standing on the apron and I had turned. You know how you see stuff out of your peripheral, right? And I turned to yell at a fan, because I was whatever. I just went and turned, and then when I turned back, I could just see her collapsing. I'm and then she went to stand up, and she collapsed again, and it's just there's and then everything changes right there in the moment.
Have you had bad injury?
I've only had one real bad injury, and I was on the outside of the ring, and I was wrestling Sumi Sakai, and she had done a crossbody off the top rope onto me, and I like to say there was no cross, it was just body, and her chin caught me under my eye and just split me open.
Oh, no.
And I didn't know at the time, but I remember hearing and I was I'm okay, no, I'm okay. And then I looked down, and there was just like a pool of blood. And then I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not okay. I'm not okay.
Because the skin is so
Yes.
thin,
Yeah.
if it gashes, it's gaseous.
Yeah,
Right.
and I mean, my whole face was bloody. I couldn't see out of my eye because it was covered with blood. Like, and I just remember her being like, "We gotta go to the finish. We gotta go to the finish." Like, and I was pretty young when that happened, so that was really scary because nothing like that had ever happened to me. But then I've been in the ring a couple times where people have like torn their ACL or and stuff like that. Like they can't get back up. So yeah, the match is just over. And it was actually Rachel Ellering in NXT, and we were doing a show, like a coconut show, we'd call them, down in Florida. And like 1 minute into the match, she just went to do a pump kick and collapsed. And she tried to get back up. She couldn't get back up. They ended the match, and she just rolled out, and I carried her to the back and put her on the trainer's table. And it was like, that. What else can you do? You know?
Right.
You're so strong too, because
Thank
she's a long one, a tall one.
So as you guys are coming up, right? You have different challenges as female wrestlers, and in terms of interacting with the fans. Like when you are talking to, there's inevitably going to be girls that are coming up that now this is like a real dream for a lot of little girls. Can grow up and they see Becky Lynch, like, you know, headlining WrestleMania or something. It's like it's a totally different world than when either of you even got started, right? When you talk to them and you tell them about dealing with the business, dealing with fans, etc., what are typically your advices that you give them?
I tell them to stay off the internet because it can be amazing in the sense that you the professional side to promote yourself and do all of that stuff, but everybody is, as an armchair critic, and none of them truly really know what it's like to be in the ring and to do a lot of these things. And I think especially when you talk about mental health and stuff like that,
Sure.
like it can be, if you're not ready for that type of, attack, like when you are so new and you're going to make mistakes, and that's what you have to be forgiving and kind to yourself, because I go back to watch my matches from like even my first 5 years and I still cringe. I mean, I still am nitpicking my matches apart from yesterday, so
Right.
You're always going to be your own worst critic. You don't need to go there. And also there's like this weird sense of false validation, I think, if you go to the internet too early, because everybody will tell you, they'll highlight this one like little thing and say, oh, you're great, you're one, and you're not prepared for that level of being told you're great when you're not great yet, right?
Right.
So that's a blessing and a curse. So I do say, like, kind of stay off of that and lean more from getting your validation from your coaches, from your peers, from the veterans. If you're working someone who's been around, or is like, I'm sure Deonna has to see it a lot too. Like when you're stepping in and you're wrestling with a younger talent or whatever, you'd hope that they would go to you for that advice, or go to their coach, or go to somebody that they respect, over going to,
Right.
the internet first to see whether they were any good or not. And it's just way different. I think the advice I would give 10 years ago is even different than the advice I'd give today versus the advice I'd give 20 years ago, because it's just, there's so much more opportunities. Like
Yeah.
you said, when girls can really now like step in and go like, I want to be a wrestler.
Yep.
And 20 years ago, that wasn't happening. Even 10 years ago, it was not as many girls and women stepping in now that go like, I want to be a wrestler, and I can see this as an achievable goal for me.
How about for if a girl comes up to you and you're telling her how you think it's best to navigate it at this point?
I think that the most important thing in my career was finding a great school and having a great trainer. And my trainer, Damian Adams in New Jersey, has such a great lineage of working with women's wrestlers and producing women's wrestlers. Again, I was treated like one of the guys. And there was very few of us, but I was treated like one of the guys. And he came with me to every single show for the first couple years of my career. He really guided me in how to form relationships with promoters and make sure I get paid and make sure I'm having worthy opponents who are actual wrestlers and I'm not going to get hurt or put in situations that I don't know how to handle yet. He truly guided me into being a professional wrestler. And I think that there's so many schools out there that just teach you how to do a Spanish fly or a moonsault off the top. They're not teaching you how to be a safe wrestler and then guiding you until you're ready to go out on your own. those first 5 years of my career, he was by my side and formed a team. You know, he calls himself Team Adams. That's his school. And I was alongside Karen Q, who's now Wendy Chu in WWE. I was along Tasha Steeles, who works with us at Impact. Elektra Lopez on NXT. There was a group of us that we wrestled everywhere together for those first few years. And I had someone that I could trust, that I could lean on, that I could try new things with, and I wasn't scared. And that environment, I think if you can find that, you're really going to be propelled to success, because you have a foundation and a strong group that is, those people are my family. And that's what I needed. I think everyone needs that, because you go out there and unfortunately, especially women, get taken so advantage of in this business. And I had people who weren't going to stand for that. And I think that that was the biggest key to my success.
Awesome. As a fan, fans get wild, you know, yelling at, and I can only imagine as a female wrestler, right? I hear what they yell at the men. You know, they yell at the females. It's even worse. And they think they get, you know, you're talking about being on the internet. These people do it to your face. Had they ever made you laugh when they really hate you?
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
walking to the ring,
Yeah.
but it actually made you laugh. Like it stopped you in your tracks and it actually made you laugh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think.
What-
They come
what
up
is
with
it
some
typically?
wild stuff. Oh gosh, I don't know. I think that because it's cool, because you almost laugh in the sense of, I don't get to be a bad girl that often. Deonna gets to be a bad girl more so than me, but I'm like, I think that's the most fun part of, like, you know that you've got them where you want them if you can get them to hate you like that. Like, genuinely, like, I hate your guts. I want to see you get your butt kicked, you know?
Yeah, I think so. When I walk to the ring, I kind of do this like shoo everyone off kind of thing, and you know, I'm the bad guy, and that's way more natural for me anyway. But it's been fun the last like year or two that people have kind of caught on to that, and they do that back to me. Or, like they're kind of like get the hell out of here, F you, you know, like they do that back, and it's like I have you where I want you. I want you to be doing that. You know, that makes you remember me, and now you're a part of what I do, and that's I think the funnest part for me right now.
It's going to be coming up, Impact Wrestling returning to Memphis for a 2-night Mid-South Mayhem. It's going to be at Graceland Live, September 22nd to 23rd. That's going to be an awesome venue for wrestling, too. Graceland Live is super cool.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Super cool, yeah.